May I have your attention for a moment? What I'm about to share with you comes from years of observation, from countless readings, from walking alongside souls who have felt what you're feeling right now. If you've stumbled upon this message, if something inside you whispered to click, to listen, to stay, it wasn't random. There are no accidents in the universe, my friend. You're here because somewhere deep in your being, you sense it too. A shift, a tremor in the fabric of what we call normal life. And in the next hour and a half, I'm going to help you understand what that sensation means, why 66 days carries a weight you can feel in your bones, and what you must do, not out of fear, but out of wisdom, to prepare your home, your heart, and your spirit for what approaches. Let me establish something with you right now. I've spent decades in service to the unseen, interpreting the symbols that reality presents to us, reading the patterns that most people dismiss as coincidence. I've sat with families in their darkest hours. I've witnessed transformations that defy logic, and I've learned that when a specific time frame appears in consciousness, when numbers like 66 days begin to echo through the collective awareness, it's never arbitrary. It's a message. And this message is for you, specifically for you. Because you're someone who has felt the unease, haven't you? You've noticed the signs, the disruptions, the way things that once felt stable now seem to shift beneath your feet like sand. You're not paranoid, you're perceptive, and that perception is about to become your greatest asset. Here's what I promise you in this time we have together. You will understand the deeper pattern behind this 66-day window. You will see how it connects to ancient cycles, to spiritual preparation, and to very practical steps you need to take right now. This isn't about creating panic. It's about creating readiness. It's about transforming anxiety into action, confusion into clarity. And when we're done, you won't just know what to do. You'll feel it in your core. You'll recognize it as truth. But before we go further, I need you to do something for me. If this message resonates, if you feel that pull of recognition, I want you to subscribe to this channel. Not because I need the numbers, but because content like this, honest, unfiltered guidance about what's really happening beneath the surface of our world, is increasingly difficult to find. The algorithms don't favor truth, they favor comfort. And what I'm sharing with you today isn't comfortable, it's necessary. So subscribe, because you'll want to return to this space. You'll want to be part of a community that sees clearly, that prepares wisely, that doesn't look away when reality gets challenging. And at the end of this message, I'm going to ask you a very specific question. I want you to comment with your answer, not just for me, but for yourself, because articulating what you're feeling, naming what you're experiencing, that's the first step in transforming it. And I want you to share this video with someone you care about, someone who you know is feeling this same undercurrent of unease. Share it as an act of love, as an act of service, because what I'm about to reveal could change the trajectory of how they navigate the coming weeks. Now, Let's begin with the question that brought you here. Why 66 days? What makes this specific time frame significant? And why am I telling you to stock up your homes? The number 66 carries a frequency, my friend. In the study of numerology, in the ancient wisdom traditions, numbers are never just quantities. They're qualities. They're vibrations. 66 reduces to 12, and 12 reduces to 3, the number of manifestation, of trinity, of completion, and new beginning. But 66 itself holds a mirror energy. 6 and 6, the material and the material, the earthly and the earthly. It's a number that speaks to doubling down on physical preparation, on taking the material realm seriously, on recognizing that spiritual awareness must be grounded in practical action. When I first began to perceive this 66-day window and understand these perceptions don't come as voices or visions in the way people imagine, they come as knowings, as patterns that suddenly clarify in consciousness. I saw it as a threshold, a liminal space, 66 days from a point of awakening to a point of transformation. And we are, right now, within that window. Some of you began to feel the shift weeks ago. Others are just now waking up to it. But the timeline is consistent. 66 days of preparation before something fundamental changes in how we live, how we access resources, how we navigate daily existence. This isn't prophecy in the dramatic sense. I'm not claiming to know the exact form the change will take. What I know is the pattern. What I read is the energy. And the energy says disruption, scarcity, a testing of systems we've taken for granted, supply chains that falter, distribution networks that fail. Not everywhere at once, perhaps, not in some apocalyptic Hollywood fashion, but enough that those who prepared will be grateful they did, and those who dismissed the signs will scramble. You've already seen the tremors, haven't you? The shortages that appear and disappear, the price increases that never quite come back down, the way certain products vanish from shelves for weeks, then return, then vanish again. The explanations change: weather, shipping delays, labor issues, but the pattern persists. Instability, unreliability, the erosion of the assumption that what you need will be there when you need it. I'm asking you to take that observation seriously. I'm asking you to act on what you already know in your gut. Stock up your homes, not in a frenzy, not in a panic, but methodically, intentionally, with the calm focus of someone who understands that preparation is an act of self-respect, of family protection, of spiritual responsibility. Let me take you deeper into why this matters on multiple levels. Because yes, there's the practical dimension, having food, water, essentials when systems falter. But there's also a psychological dimension, an emotional dimension, and a spiritual dimension. When you prepare, when you take action based on inner knowing, rather than waiting for external validation, you shift something in your consciousness. You move from victim to agent, from passive to active, from fearful to empowered. Fear says, something bad is coming, and I'm helpless. Wisdom says, change is coming, and I'm ready. Do you feel the difference? It's not just semantic, it's energetic. It's the difference between contraction and expansion, between paralysis and purpose. In my years of readings, I've encountered countless souls who carried regret, not for things they did, but for things they didn't do. For the moments when intuition whispered and they ignored it. For the times when signs appeared and they looked away. For the opportunities to prepare that they dismissed as paranoia or overreaction. And then, when the crisis came, and it always comes in one form or another, they found themselves unprepared, dependent, vulnerable. And the spiritual weight of that vulnerability is heavier than any physical hardship. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to look back 66 days from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now and think, I knew, I felt it. Why didn't I listen? So let's talk practically. What does it mean to stock up your homes? What should you prioritize? How do you approach this without falling into either extreme, either dismissing it entirely or becoming consumed by survivalist anxiety? First, water. Always water. The human body can survive weeks without food, but only days without water. And water infrastructure is more fragile than most people realize. A disruption in electricity, a contamination event, a failure in treatment facilities, any of these can render your tap unreliable. You need stored water, gallons of it. Calculate based on 1 gallon per person per day minimum. More if you can, and not just for drinking, for cooking, for hygiene, for the 1,000 small ways we use water without thinking. If you have space, get large containers, 5-gallon jugs, water storage barrels. If space is limited, start with cases of bottled water. Put them in closets, under beds, in the garage. Make it a priority. Because when water becomes scarce, nothing else matters. You can't eat if you can't drink. You can't maintain health if you can't clean. Second, food. Non-perishable, calorie-dense, familiar. This isn't the time to stock up on foods you've never tried or your family won't eat. Rice, beans, pasta, canned vegetables, canned proteins, tuna, chicken, salmon, peanut butter, oats, flour if you bake, cooking oil, salt, sugar, coffee and tea if you consume them, because maintaining some normalcy, some comfort, matters for morale. Think in terms of weeks, not days. If you could only shop once in the next month, what would you need? If deliveries stopped, if stores had empty shelves, what would sustain you? Build toward that. You don't have to do it all at once. Every shopping trip, add extra. A few extra cans, another bag of rice, an extra jar of peanut butter. It accumulates faster than you think. And here's something people often overlook. Comfort foods. Foods that bring joy, that feel like treats. Chocolate, cookies, whatever your version of comfort is. Because if disruption comes, if stress rises, having something that soothes, that reminds you of normalcy, that's not frivolous, That's psychological survival. Third, essentials beyond food and water. Medications. If you take prescriptions, talk to your doctor about getting a larger supply. Over-the-counter medicines, pain relievers, cold and flu remedies, stomach aids, first aid supplies, hygiene products, soap, toothpaste, toilet paper, feminine products, diapers if you have small children, cleaning supplies, batteries, flashlights, candles, matches. Think through a week without electricity. What would you need? How would you cook? How would you see at night? How would you stay warm or cool, depending on season? You don't need elaborate solutions. A camping stove and fuel canisters, battery-powered lights, blankets, simple, accessible preparations. Fourth, and this is where it gets interesting from a spiritual perspective, seeds. If you have any space at all, a yard, a balcony, even a sunny window, get seeds. Vegetables, herbs, anything that grows. Because the act of planting, of nurturing life, of participating in creation, that's not just about future food. That's about maintaining hope. That's about remembering that life continues, that growth is possible, that you're not just consuming, but contributing. I've seen people transform their anxiety through gardening, through putting their hands in soil, through watching something green emerge from darkness. It's alchemy. It's therapy. It's connection to the earth, to cycles, to the intelligence that sustains all life. Now, some of you are thinking, this sounds extreme. This sounds like fear-mongering. And I understand that resistance. We've been conditioned to trust systems, to believe that someone else is handling the big picture, that our job is just to show up and consume. But that conditioning is breaking down. The systems are showing their cracks, and the souls who thrive in the coming times won't be the ones who clung to old assumptions. They'll be the ones who adapted, who prepared, who took responsibility for their own resilience. This isn't about not trusting. It's about not being naive. It's about recognizing that trust and preparation aren't opposites. You can trust in a higher order, in divine timing, in the ultimate goodness of existence, and still lock your doors at night, still save money, still prepare for contingencies. Spiritual faith doesn't require material recklessness. Let me share something I've observed in the readings I've done over the years. There's a pattern among souls who navigate crisis well. They're not the ones who had the most resources. They're not the ones who were wealthiest or most connected. They're the ones who listened to their intuition, who acted on subtle guidance, who prepared when it seemed unnecessary, and then found themselves grateful when it became essential. There's a story I remember, a family I worked with years ago. The father had a dream, a recurring dream of empty shelves and closed roads. He didn't understand it. It troubled him. But instead of dismissing it, he honored it. He started stocking up, quietly, without fanfare. His wife thought he was being paranoid. His friends would have mocked him if they'd known. But he followed the inner prompting. 6 months later, a regional disaster struck. Not something anyone predicted. Not something that made headlines beforehand. But suddenly, their area was cut off. No deliveries for weeks. Stores emptied in days. And this family? They were fine. More than fine. They had enough to share with neighbors. They became a source of stability in chaos. And the father told me later, I didn't know why I was preparing. I just knew I had to. And that knowing saved us. That's what I'm asking you to honor. That knowing, that whisper, that sense that something is shifting and you need to be ready. But let's go deeper, because preparation isn't just physical. In fact, the physical preparation is almost secondary. What matters more is the internal preparation, the spiritual readiness, the emotional resilience. You can have a house full of supplies and still collapse in crisis if your inner foundation is weak. Conversely, you can have minimal resources and navigate hardship with grace if your spirit is strong. So while you're stocking your pantry, stock your soul. What does that mean practically? It means cultivating practices that center you. Meditation, prayer, whatever form of connection to the divine resonates with you. It means building community, strengthening relationships, because isolation is the real danger. It means processing fear rather than suppressing it, because unprocessed fear becomes panic, and panic is what destroys people in crisis. Sit with your fear. Ask it questions. What are you afraid of, specifically? Loss of control? Scarcity? Harm to loved ones? Name it. Speak it aloud. Write it down. Because when you bring fear into the light, it loses its power. It becomes manageable. It becomes information rather than paralysis. And then counter the fear with vision. What do you want to create? How do you want to show up when things get hard? What kind of person do you want to be in crisis? Calm, generous, resourceful, creative? Hold that vision. Rehearse it in your mind. Because your brain doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experience and actual experience. When you mentally rehearse resilience, you're training your nervous system to embody it. This is ancient wisdom, my friend. This is what the mystery schools taught. This is what spiritual adepts have always known. You create your reality not just through action, but through consciousness, through the stories you tell yourself, through the identity you claim. So claim this: I am someone who prepares wisely. I am someone who listens to intuition. I am someone who takes responsibility for my well-being and the well-being of those I love. I am someone who stays calm in chaos. I am someone who finds solutions. I am someone who trusts the process while doing the work. Say it until you believe it. Say it until it becomes you. Now, let's address the questions some of you are asking. What exactly is going to happen in 66 days? What's the event? And here's where I need you to shift your thinking. Because we're conditioned to expect singular events, a specific date, a dramatic moment. But that's not how most transformations occur. They're gradual. They're cumulative. They're a series of small breakdowns that suddenly reach a tipping point. The 66 days isn't about a single event. It's about a window of acceleration, a period where the trends that have been building, economic instability, supply chain fragility, social tension, environmental stress, begin to compound, where the buffer that's kept things functioning despite the strain finally erodes. Think of it like a dam. For years, small cracks appear. Water seeps through. Engineers patch it. It holds. But the pressure keeps building. And then one day, not because of one dramatic thing, but because of the accumulation of stress, the dam fails. Not all at once necessarily. Maybe a section collapses. Maybe it's a slow crumbling. But the failure is real, and everyone downstream is affected. We're downstream, my friend, and the cracks are visible if you're willing to look. I'm not saying this to frighten you. I'm saying it to mobilize you, because there's still time. 66 days is enough time to prepare significantly if you start now, if you act with focus and intention. Every day you wait, the window narrows. Every day you tell yourself, it's probably fine, probably overblown, probably not going to be that bad. That's a day you could have used to secure your foundation. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you prepare, the less you'll need it. Not because the external situation changes, but because your relationship to it changes. When you know you have water, food, essentials, when you know you've done what you can, the anxiety dissolves. You stop obsessively checking news. You stop spiraling in worst-case scenarios. You relax into trust, because trust is easy when you've done the work. Preparation creates peace. Lack of preparation creates panic. Which do you want to experience in the coming weeks? Let me talk about money for a moment, because I know some of you are thinking, I can't afford to stock up. I'm already stretched thin. And I hear you. I've worked with people in every economic situation imaginable. And here's what I've learned. Preparation isn't about spending a lot. It's about spending wisely. You don't need expensive freeze-dried survival food. You need rice and beans, which are among the cheapest foods available. You don't need a sophisticated water filtration system. You need jugs of water from the grocery store. You don't need a generator. You need candles and flashlights. Start small. This week, spend an extra $10 on your grocery trip. Buy a big bag of rice. Next week, another $10. Buy beans and canned vegetables. The week after, water. Build incrementally. Even people on very tight budgets can do this if they prioritize it. And here's another angle. What are you spending money on that isn't essential? Streaming services? Coffee shop visits? Takeout? I'm not judging any of those things. But if you're telling yourself you can't afford to prepare while also spending on conveniences, that's a choice. That's a priority decision. And I'm asking you to reconsider your priorities for the next 66 days. Cut the non-essentials temporarily. Redirect that money to preparation. You can always resubscribe to services later. You can't restock shelves that are empty. For those of you with more resources, with financial flexibility, you have a different responsibility. Prepare not just for yourself, but for others. Stock extra. Because when disruption comes, you'll have neighbors who didn't prepare, family members who didn't listen, friends who are struggling. And your abundance can become a blessing to them. I've seen this play out. I've seen people who prepared generously become pillars of their communities in crisis, not because they hoarded, but because they had enough to share. And the spiritual reward of that, the sense of purpose, of service, of being a source of stability. That's worth more than any material security. So if you can, think beyond your household. Think about your street, your building, your circle. Who might need help? How can you position yourself to provide it? This is how we transform potential catastrophe into community resilience, not by isolating, not by hoarding, but by preparing with generosity in mind. Now I want to address the spiritual dimension of what's happening more directly, because on the surface, this is about practical preparation. But beneath the surface, it's about something much deeper. We are in a time of collective awakening, a time when old structures, economic, political, social, even spiritual, are being revealed as insufficient, as unsustainable. And that revelation is uncomfortable. It challenges our sense of security. It forces us to question assumptions we've built our lives on. But discomfort is the precursor to growth. Crisis is the catalyst for transformation. And what feels like breakdown is often breakthrough in disguise. The souls who understand this, who can hold both the practical challenge and the spiritual opportunity, those are the souls who will not just survive the coming times, but thrive in them, who will emerge stronger, clearer, more aligned with truth. You're being invited into a deeper level of self-reliance, not the ego's version of self-reliance, which is about control and independence, but the soul's version, which is about resourcefulness and resilience, about discovering capacities you didn't know you had, about learning to trust yourself in new ways. You're being invited into community in a more authentic way, not the superficial community of social media likes and casual acquaintances, but the real community of mutual aid, of showing up for each other, of recognizing that we're interconnected and interdependent. You're being invited into presence, into living more consciously, into paying attention to what matters. Because when systems are stable, we can afford to be distracted. We can afford to sleepwalk. But when systems destabilize, presence becomes survival. Awareness becomes essential. This is a gift, my friend, even though it doesn't feel like one, even though it's wrapped in anxiety and uncertainty. The gift is the wake-up call. The gift is the opportunity to live more deliberately, more authentically, more aligned with what's real. And 66 days is your preparation period, your training ground, your chance to build the muscles, physical, emotional, spiritual, that you'll need. So use it. Don't waste it. Don't spend the next 66 days in denial or distraction. Spend them in purposeful action. Every day, do something, stock something, learn something, practice something, connect with someone. Build your resilience in small, consistent ways. And watch what happens. Watch how your anxiety transforms into confidence. Watch how your fear transforms into focus. Watch how your sense of victimhood transforms into agency. This is alchemy. This is the spiritual path made practical. This is how you turn lead into gold, crisis into opportunity, breakdown into breakthrough. I want to talk about something that might seem tangential, but is actually central. The importance of maintaining routines and rituals during times of disruption. When external circumstances become chaotic, internal structure becomes your anchor. The simple act of making your bed every morning, of drinking your coffee or tea in a mindful way, of taking a walk, of reading, of whatever small practices ground you, these become lifelines. In my work, I've seen people fall apart not because of the magnitude of the crisis they faced, but because they abandoned all structure. They stopped sleeping regular hours, stopped eating properly, stopped moving their bodies, and the physical deterioration accelerated the psychological deterioration. Don't let that happen to you. As you prepare practically, also prepare rhythmically. Establish routines now that you can maintain regardless of external circumstances. Morning practices, evening practices, weekly practices. These create continuity. They remind you that you're still you, that life continues, that there's order even in chaos. And rituals, small ceremonies that mark transitions, that honor moments, that connect you to something larger, these are even more powerful. Lighting a candle before meals, saying a prayer or setting an intention, taking a moment of silence. These aren't frivolous. They're how humans have navigated uncertainty for millennia. They're how we access the sacred in the mundane. They're how we remember that we're not just physical beings scrambling for resources, but spiritual beings having a human experience. So, as you stock your pantry, also stock your spiritual practice. Make it robust. Make it reliable. Make it something you can lean on when everything else feels unstable. Let me address another question I sense some of you holding. What if I prepare and nothing happens? What if this is all overblown and I've wasted time and money? First, you haven't wasted anything. Having extra food, water, and essentials in your home is never a waste. It's prudent. It's responsible. It's what adults do. Even if no major disruption occurs in the next 66 days, you've created a buffer. You've built resilience. You've practiced listening to intuition and acting on it. Those are valuable skills and resources regardless of external circumstances. Second, the absence of dramatic crisis doesn't mean the preparation was unnecessary. It might mean the preparation worked. It might mean that enough people took action that the worst outcomes were avoided. It might mean the timeline shifted. Energy is fluid. Probabilities change based on collective choices. Third, and most importantly, you'll sleep better. You'll worry less. You'll feel more secure. And that peace of mind, that's worth everything. That's worth far more than the cost of some extra rice and water. So release the need for external validation. Release the need for something dramatic to happen to justify your actions. Prepare because it's wise. Prepare because it aligns with your inner knowing. Prepare because it's an act of self-care and family care. And then let go of the outcome. This is spiritual maturity. This is what it means to act from wisdom rather than fear. You do what's yours to do, and you trust the process. Now, as we move deeper into this conversation, I want to talk about the emotional landscape you might be navigating, because I know this isn't easy. I know that even as you're taking in this information, part of you is resisting. Part of you wants to close this video, to dismiss it, to return to the comfort of not thinking about these things. That resistance is normal. It's your psyche's defense mechanism. Change is threatening to the ego. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. And what I'm asking you to consider, that the systems you've relied on might fail, that you need to take responsibility for your own security, that challenges fundamental assumptions. So be gentle with yourself as you process this. Don't force it. Don't berate yourself for the resistance. Just notice it, acknowledge it, and then gently move through it. One breath at a time, one small action at a time. You don't have to do everything today. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to take the next step. Buy the water. Buy the rice. Have the conversation with your family. Make the list. Take the step. And as you do, check in with your body. Because your body holds wisdom that your mind often dismisses. When you think about preparing, how does your body respond? Does it relax? Does it feel relief? That's confirmation. That's your system saying, yes, this is right. This is what we need. Conversely, when you think about not preparing, about just hoping for the best, how does your body respond? Does it tighten? Does anxiety spike? That's information too. That's your system saying, no, this isn't safe. We need to act. Learn to read these signals. Learn to trust them. Your body is an instrument of intuition. It knows things before your conscious mind catches up. I want to share another story with you. Years ago, I worked with a woman who was going through a difficult time. Her marriage was ending, her finances were strained, and she felt completely overwhelmed. And in the midst of all that chaos, she had this strange compulsion to organize her home, to clean out closets, to stock her pantry, to create order in her physical space. She felt guilty about it. She thought she should be focusing on the big problems, the divorce, the money, the emotional turmoil. She thought organizing was avoidance. But I told her, no, this is exactly what you need to be doing. Because you can't control the divorce timeline. You can't immediately solve the financial situation. But you can control your environment. You can create order in your space. And that order will create calm in your nervous system. That calm will help you think more clearly, make better decisions, navigate the challenges with more grace. She followed that guidance. She spent weeks organizing, cleaning, preparing her home. And she told me later that it saved her. That having a clean, orderly, well-stocked space became her sanctuary. That when everything else was falling apart, she could come home to stability And that stability gave her the foundation to rebuild her life. That's what I'm offering you now. In a time when so much feels uncertain, create certainty where you can. In your home, in your preparations, in your practices. Create islands of stability that you can stand on while the waters rise. Because the waters are rising, my friend. Maybe not literally, maybe not dramatically, but energetically, systemically, they're rising, and you need solid ground. Let's talk about community again, because this is crucial. One of the biggest mistakes people make in preparation is thinking they can do it alone, that they can stockpile enough, secure enough, protect enough to be completely independent. But that's not how humans are designed. We're social creatures. We're tribal. We survive and thrive in connection, not isolation. So as you prepare your home, also prepare your relationships. Reach out to neighbors. Have conversations with friends and family. Find out who's thinking about these things, who's concerned, who's taking action. Build networks of mutual support. Maybe it's a group text where you share information and resources. Maybe it's a neighborhood meeting to discuss preparedness. Maybe it's just a few trusted people you can call on if things get hard. But build it now. Don't wait until crisis hits to try to create community. Because in crisis, people default to survival mode. They contract, they protect. But if you've built relationships beforehand, if you've established trust and reciprocity, then in crisis you can expand, you can cooperate, you can pool resources and skills and support each other. This is how communities have survived every historical crisis, not through individualism, but through collective resilience, through recognizing that your well-being and my well-being are interconnected. So be the person who initiates those conversations. Be the person who brings people together. Be the person who says, "Hey, I know things feel uncertain. Let's talk about how we can support each other." You'll be surprised how many people are feeling the same things you are. How many people are worried but don't know what to do. How many people are waiting for someone else to start the conversation. Be that someone. And if people dismiss you, if they think you're overreacting, that's okay. You're not trying to convince anyone. You're just planting seeds. You're just offering an invitation. Some will accept it now. Others will remember it later when they need it. Your job isn't to save everyone. Your job is to be prepared, to be a resource, and to offer what you can to those who are ready to receive it. Now, I want to address something that might be happening for some of you. As you listen to this, as you take in the information, you might be feeling anger. Anger at systems that are failing. Anger at leaders who aren't leading. Anger at the situation itself. That anger is valid. It's appropriate. But it's also dangerous if you let it consume you. Because anger that isn't channeled becomes bitterness. It becomes resentment. It becomes a poison that harms you more than anyone else. So feel the anger, acknowledge it, but then transform it. Use it as fuel for action. Let it motivate you to prepare, to build resilience, to create alternatives. Let it drive you towards solutions rather than paralysis. This is the spiritual work. This is the alchemy, taking the heavy emotions, fear, anger, grief, and transmuting them into something productive, into clarity, into purpose, into power. You have more power than you realize, more agency, more capacity. The systems want you to feel helpless because helpless people are compliant. But you're not helpless. You're resourceful. You're creative. You're resilient. Claim that. Own that. Act from that. As we approach the final portion of our time together, I want to talk about hope, because I know this conversation has been heavy. I know it's brought up difficult feelings and uncomfortable truths. But hope isn't about denying reality. Hope isn't about pretending everything is fine. Hope is about believing that you can navigate whatever comes, that you have what it takes, that even in difficulty, there's meaning, there's growth, there's possibility. I have hope for you. I have hope for us. Not because I think the road ahead is easy, but because I've seen what humans are capable of when they're pushed. I've seen the creativity, the courage, the compassion that emerges in crisis. I've seen people discover strengths they didn't know they had. I've seen communities come together in beautiful ways. I've seen individuals transform their lives, their consciousness, their entire trajectory because they were forced to. And I believe that's what's happening now. We're being forced to wake up, to grow up, to take responsibility, to live more consciously. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's challenging, but it's also necessary. It's also sacred. So hold the hope. Hold the vision of who you're becoming through this. Hold the possibility that on the other side of this 66 days, this period of preparation and transformation, you'll be stronger, clearer, more aligned with your truth. That's worth preparing for. That's worth working toward. Let me give you some final, very practical guidance as we close. In the next week, focus on water and food basics. Get your water supply established. Get your rice, beans, pasta, canned goods. Build the foundation. In the second week, focus on medications and hygiene. Make sure you have what you need for health and cleanliness. In the third week, focus on energy and light, batteries, flashlights, candles, alternative cooking methods if needed. In the fourth week and beyond, refine and expand. Fill gaps, add comfort items, build your seed stock, strengthen your community connections. And throughout all of it, maintain your spiritual practice. Stay grounded, stay centered, stay connected to something larger than the immediate circumstances. This is your roadmap. This is your 66-day plan. Simple, actionable, achievable. You can do this. You are doing this. By listening to this message, by staying with me for this entire conversation, you've already demonstrated that you're someone who takes responsibility, someone who listens to intuition, someone who's willing to prepare. Now, follow through. Take the information and transform it into action. Take the awareness and transform it into preparation. Take the anxiety and transform it into empowerment. And remember, you're not alone in this. There are thousands, maybe millions of people who are feeling what you're feeling, who are preparing as you're preparing, who are waking up to the same realities. You're part of a global shift in consciousness. You're part of a movement toward greater resilience, greater awareness, greater responsibility. That's something to be proud of. That's something to lean into. So here's my question for you, the one I want you to answer in the comments. What's the first step you're going to take in the next 24 hours to prepare? Not what you're thinking about, not what you might do, what you're actually going to do. Write it down. Commit to it publicly, because there's power in declaration. There's accountability in sharing. And if this message has served you, if it's given you clarity or motivation or direction, share it with someone who needs it. Send it to a friend. Post it to your community. Be a conduit for this information, because the more people who prepare, the more resilient we all become. The more people who wake up, the more conscious our collective response can be. You have a role to play in this, not a passive role, an active one, a crucial one. So play it, step into it, own it. I'm going to leave you with a blessing, a prayer, an intention. May you trust your inner knowing. May you act with wisdom and courage. May you prepare your home and your heart. May you find peace in the midst of uncertainty. May you discover strengths you didn't know you had. May you be a source of stability for others. May you navigate the coming times with grace. May you emerge transformed, awakened, aligned with your deepest truth. You are ready for this. You are capable of this. You are being guided through this. Trust the process. Do the work. And know that you are held. You are supported. You are loved by forces seen and unseen. Go now. Prepare. Act. Become. The 66 days begin now. But before you go, before you step back into your life with this new awareness, I want to take you even deeper into what this preparation truly means, because there are layers we haven't fully explored yet, dimensions of this transformation that deserve your attention. Let me talk to you about the psychology of scarcity versus the psychology of abundance. Because how you approach preparation will determine not just what you have, but who you become through this process. Scarcity consciousness says, there won't be enough. I must hoard. I must protect what's mine. Others are threats to my security. This mindset creates contraction, fear, isolation. It turns neighbors into competitors. It transforms community into battleground. Abundance consciousness says, I prepare wisely, and in my preparation, I create surplus that can serve others. My security doesn't require your insecurity. We can all be safe We can all be provided for. This mindset creates expansion, generosity, connection. It turns neighbors into allies. It transforms community into sanctuary. Which consciousness will you choose? Because both can motivate preparation, but they create entirely different realities. I'm asking you to prepare from abundance, to stock your home not from a place of fear that there won't be enough, but from a place of wisdom that says, I'm creating a foundation of security from which I can serve. I'm building a reservoir from which I can pour out when others are empty. This is the difference between a survivalist and a thriver. The survivalist prepares to endure. The thriver prepares to flourish and to help others flourish. Be a thriver. Now, let's talk about skills, because physical supplies are important, but skills are even more valuable. Skills can't be taken from you. They can't spoil. They can't run out. And in times of disruption, people with skills become invaluable. What skills do you have? What skills could you develop in the next 66 days? Cooking from basic ingredients, food preservation, canning, fermenting, dehydrating, basic first aid, sewing and mending, gardening, water purification, fire building, basic repairs. These aren't just practical abilities. They're forms of empowerment. They're ways of reclaiming agency in a world that's made us dependent on systems. And here's something beautiful. Learning a new skill, focusing your attention on mastering something practical, that's one of the most effective ways to manage anxiety. It gives your mind something constructive to focus on. It creates a sense of progress and accomplishment. It builds confidence. So as you prepare physically, also prepare skillfully. Pick one skill you want to develop or improve. Find resources, videos, books, mentors. Practice. Even 15 minutes a day compounds over 66 days into real competence. And share your skills. Teach others. Because in community resilience, the diversity of skills matters more than any individual stockpile. If you know how to purify water, and your neighbor knows how to preserve food, and another neighbor knows first aid, together you're far more resilient than any of you alone. This is the web of interdependence that creates true security, not isolation, not self-sufficiency in the extreme sense, but a network of capable, generous people who support each other. Let me address something else that's important. Children. If you have children in your life, your own, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, how you navigate this preparation will shape how they understand uncertainty, how they respond to challenge, how they relate to fear. Don't hide the reality from them, but don't overwhelm them either. Frame it appropriately for their age. For young children, it can be as simple as, we're making sure we have extra food and water at home, just like we keep extra blankets in case it gets cold. We're being smart and prepared. For older children and teenagers, you can be more direct. Explain that systems sometimes have problems, that it's wise to be ready, that this is what responsible people do. Involve them in the preparation. Let them help make lists, shop, organize. Give them age-appropriate responsibilities. Because what you're really teaching them is agency. You're teaching them that when faced with uncertainty, we don't freeze, we don't panic, we assess, we plan, we act, we prepare. These are life skills that will serve them far beyond this particular moment. And watch how it affects them. Many parents report that when they involve children in preparation, the children's anxiety actually decreases because children pick up on adult worry. They sense when something is wrong. And not knowing what's happening or what to do is more frightening than being included in purposeful action. So bring them in. Make it a family project. Make it even, dare I say, fun. Turn it into a game. Who can find the best deals on canned goods? Who can come up with the most creative ways to use basic ingredients? Who can design the best emergency kit? You're creating memories. You're building family cohesion. You're teaching invaluable lessons. And you're preparing together, which is always more effective than preparing alone. Now I want to talk about information. In times of uncertainty, information becomes both precious and dangerous. Precious because accurate information helps you make good decisions. Dangerous because misinformation, fear-mongering, and manipulation run rampant. How do you navigate this? How do you stay informed without becoming consumed by the news cycle? How do you discern truth from propaganda? First, limit your consumption. You don't need to check news constantly. Once or twice a day is sufficient. More than that, and you're just feeding anxiety, not gaining useful information. Second, diversify your sources. Don't rely on a single outlet or perspective. Look at multiple sources, including alternative media, international perspectives, local reports. The truth usually emerges in the overlap and the gaps between different narratives. Third, trust your discernment. If something feels manipulative, if it's designed to trigger fear or outrage rather than inform, be skeptical. Ask, who benefits from me believing this? What am I being pushed toward? What action is this trying to provoke? Fourth, focus on the local. National and global news can feel overwhelming and abstract. But what's happening in your community? What are local conditions? What are your neighbors experiencing? This is the information that's most relevant to your immediate preparation. And fifth, balance information with inspiration. For every piece of challenging news you consume, also consume something uplifting. Read poetry, listen to music, watch something beautiful. Engage with art, with nature, with anything that reminds you that life is more than crisis, that beauty persists, that the human spirit is resilient and creative. This is how you stay informed without becoming deformed by information. This is how you maintain perspective. Let me share something about the spiritual significance of the number 66 that I haven't fully explored yet. In the ancient mystery traditions, numbers were seen as gateways to understanding cosmic patterns. And 66, as I mentioned, reduces to 12 and then to 3. But let's look at 12 more closely. 12 is the number of cosmic order. 12 months, 12 zodiac signs, 12 tribes, 12 apostles, 12 hours of day and night. It's the number that represents completion of a cycle, the fullness of time, the gathering of all parts into a whole. When you're in a 66-day window, you're in a doubled 6 that points toward 12, toward the completion of one cycle and the beginning of another. You're in a liminal time, a threshold time, a time between what was and what will be. And in threshold times, the veils are thin. Intuition is heightened. Synchronicities increase. You're more receptive to guidance, more sensitive to signs, more capable of transformation. So pay attention. Notice what appears in your life during these 66 days. Notice the conversations that happen, the people who show up, the ideas that come to you, the dreams you have. Keep a journal. Write down the patterns, because you're being given information, guidance, preparation on multiple levels, not just physical, but psychic, spiritual, energetic. This is a sacred time, my friend. Treat it as such. Approach it with reverence. Not with fear, but with the kind of respectful attention you'd bring to any significant initiation. Because that's what this is, an initiation, a passage from one state of consciousness to another, from dependence to self-reliance, from unconsciousness to awareness, from passivity to agency, from isolation to community, from fear to wisdom. You're being initiated whether you choose it or not. But you can choose how you move through it. You can choose to resist and suffer, or to surrender and transform. You can choose to contract or expand. You can choose to close down or open up. I'm inviting you to choose transformation, to choose expansion, to choose opening. Let's talk about one more practical area: communication. In times of disruption, communication systems can fail or become unreliable. Internet outages, cell tower problems, power failures that affect connectivity. How will you communicate with loved ones if normal channels are down? Do you have a plan? Have you discussed it with family members? Simple things matter. Having a designated meeting place if you're separated. Having a contact person outside your immediate area who everyone can check in with. Having written down important phone numbers, because when your phone dies and you can't charge it, can you actually remember the numbers you need? Consider getting a battery-powered or hand-crank radio, not just for entertainment, but for emergency broadcasts, for weather alerts, for information when other sources are unavailable. Consider walkie-talkies if you have family members in close proximity. They don't rely on cell towers or internet. They're direct, simple, reliable for short-range communication. And here's something old-fashioned but valuable. Know your neighbors' names. Know which houses have elderly people, small children, people with disabilities who might need help. Know who has skills, resources, tools that could be shared in emergency. Create a neighborhood contact list. Exchange phone numbers. Maybe even create a simple communication tree. If something happens, Person A calls persons B and C, who each call two more people, and so on. This way, information can spread quickly, even if broader systems are down. This is community resilience in action. This is how we take care of each other. This is how we ensure that no one is isolated, forgotten, left behind. I want to address one more emotional dimension: grief. Because what we're really talking about beneath all the practical preparation is the end of a certain kind of world, the end of the assumption of endless abundance, of reliable systems, of someone else always handling the big problems. And endings require grief, even when they're necessary endings, even when they're making space for something better. There's still loss. There's still the death of what was familiar. So give yourself permission to grieve, to feel sad about the loss of ease, of convenience, of the illusion of security, to mourn the world you thought you lived in, the future you thought you were heading toward. Grief isn't weakness. Grief is honesty. Grief is the heart's way of acknowledging that something real has changed. And when you allow yourself to grieve, when you move through it rather than around it, you come out the other side lighter, clearer, more present to what actually is, rather than clinging to what was or what you wished would be. So cry if you need to, rage if you need to, sit in silence with the heaviness if you need to, and then, when the wave passes, return to action. Return to preparation. Return to purpose. This is the rhythm. Feel, then act. Process, then prepare. Grieve, then grow. It's not one or the other. It's both. It's the full spectrum of human response to change. And know that on the other side of this grief, there's something waiting. A new relationship with life, a deeper appreciation for what matters, a stronger sense of self, a more authentic connection to others, a more direct relationship with the sacred. These are the gifts hidden in the challenge. These are the treasures buried in the difficulty. And they're worth everything you're going through to find them. As we truly come to the close of our time together, I want to speak directly to your soul, not to your mind, not to your fears, not to your practical concerns, but to the deepest part of you, the part that knows, the part that's eternal, the part that chose to be here, in this body, in this time, for this exact experience. Your soul is not surprised by what's happening. Your soul knew. Your soul prepared for this before you were born. You chose to incarnate in a time of great transition because you have something to offer, because you have strengths that are needed, because you have a role to play in the transformation of consciousness that's occurring. So trust that. Trust that you're exactly where you need to be. Trust that you have what it takes. Trust that you're being guided, supported, held by forces far greater than your individual self. And trust that this preparation, this physical, emotional, spiritual preparation, is part of your path. It's not a detour. It's not a distraction. It's the work you came here to do. So do it with full presence. Do it with full commitment. Do it with the understanding that every can of food you store, every gallon of water you set aside, every skill you learn, every conversation you have, every moment of fear you transform into action, all of it is sacred work. All of it matters. All of it is part of the great turning. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are a participant in evolution. You are a co-creator of the new world that's emerging from the ashes of the old. Own that power. Step into that role. Become who you came here to be. The 66 days are your crucible, your training ground, your initiation. Use them well. And remember, always remember, you are loved. You are supported. You are never alone. The universe is conspiring for your highest good, even when it doesn't feel like it, especially when it doesn't feel like it. Trust the process. Do the work. Prepare your home. Prepare your heart. Prepare your spirit, and step forward into whatever comes with courage, with grace, with the unshakable knowing that you are ready, because you are. You always have been. Now go. The work awaits. The transformation calls. The new world is being born, and you are the midwife. Blessed be your journey. Blessed be your preparation. Blessed be your becoming. The 66 days begin now.